You recently completed your BFA at California State University Long
本当にありがとうございました。
this art form.
I think what inspired me the most was just listening to my gut feeling. I went into college thinking I was going to study mycology, which is studying mushrooms, and so I went into college thinking I wanted to become a scientist or work like in the medical field or something like that. But my first year was just really depressing and sad because I was lying to myself. I wanted to explore what art meant to me, but I had no idea. And I just knew that ceramics, that you had to use your whole body and your whole hand, and that very intrigued me. And so without really knowing anything, I just kind of jumped into it and like dived into it head first, and here I am making it my career. And so it's been a really sick ride.
Given the nature of your work, what challenges have you encountered over the past year?
Due to COVID, our campus was closed, and that was on my campus studio at Cal State Long Beach, and that was my main resource for a studio space. And so I had to make my own studio space at home, and I also love touch and my pieces being able to exist in an intimate space. And because due to COVID, there were so many times where I'm like making the work, touching my work, and knowing that my pieces weren't able to exist in the same way that they could in an intimate space, and being touched was a really interesting challenge. I feel like I've always thought about touch, but during the past year in 2020, it felt very interesting to know that my pieces just were being experienced in a different way, whether that was through just social media or on a platform, a digital platform, than in an actual physical space.
Where do the ideas for your sculptures originate from, and why?
My sculptures, the idea and the feelings that I bring into them just come from the depths of my soul and my heart. Anytime I'm working towards a piece, it's for me kind of like writing into a diary, and it's not always cathartic, it's not always the best feeling because I feel very deeply, and my pieces become some sort of a tangible form of what I'm feeling inside. It's kind of like when you have a cavity, if you keep it in your mouth, it just starts aching and it becomes this painful like thing, and that's how I feel about my emotions. But once I'm able to extract that out and bring that forth in my clay, I'm able to kind of like release it. And so my ideas and inspiration and all of that definitely comes from the things I've experienced and the things I'm daydreaming about, and so it's like my environment within myself.
Soft Opening recently held a solo presentation of your work at the Piccadilly Circus Underground Station in London, titled Intra-Action Part 1, curated by Kate Wong. How did this solo presentation come to light?
So our mutual friend Gray Wilibinski put a word out to Kate that I make ceramic work, and Gray just connected the three of us, and then Kate and I started speaking. And I've never met Kate yet, and I've also never been to the Piccadilly Underground Station or London, but Kate hit me up and she was like, hey, I'm curating this show. It's in 3 sections, and so I was the part 1 of the show titled Intra-Action. And again, this show was just talking about touch and intimacy and like in the surrounding, and that's pretty much how it came out. And I haven't seen the show, but just knowing that my pieces were able to exist in the same place and time as people just like rushing to catch the train or rushing to go to work or rushing back from their crush's house or whatever the case may be, just knowing that my pieces were able to exist in this place with people who might not necessarily go to an art show or an art gallery, or even if they didn't recognize my pieces, the fact that they spent that time together truly was really exciting and really eye-opening for me.
What was the most exciting aspect about showing in London?
The most exciting aspect was just knowing that my pieces could exist so far beyond my reach and connect on its own. I feel like there were instances where people messaged me and were like, oh my god, I saw your work, and because it was in the Piccadilly Underground Station storefront kind of setup, people weren't necessarily able to be super close to the pieces, so there was definitely a layer of like glass and distance keeping the pieces in front of the individuals rather than around. But just knowing that so many people were excited to see my pieces really meant a lot to me, and it was really exciting.
How much do other forms of art, such as fashion and music, influence your work?
Fashion and music influences my work a lot. I'm always listening to music when working, and clothing is definitely something that I've always been intrigued and interested in, even as a kid. And the first sculpture I ever made was referencing a page from Fruits magazine, which is a magazine where this photographer just photographed kids in Harajuku during the week and the weekends, where they would just close off the street in Harajuku. And so it was like this kind of street block party for like kids and teens to just enjoy the street, and their form of expression I really, really, truly admire and love. And so I feel like music and clothing and fashion is definitely another extension of our self-expression, and rather than necessarily looking at art, I find myself always listening to music and looking at magazines and clothing to influence my work, trying to channel that, like, not same but similar expression that I get from like looking at how people express themselves through clothing.
Great.
You were born in Kashiwa, Japan, but are currently based in LA. How is your background reflected in your sculptures and creative process?
My background growing in Japan definitely is a big part of the way I create. I'm currently 23, but I lived there until I was 7. I lived in Japan until I was 7, and I think somewhere in my mind, in my heart, I knew that I wasn't going to be in my motherland for too long. And so I feel like as a kid, I became very observant of my environment, and I felt like a sponge, like sucking in everything I could with the limited time that I had. Not just with my family, but I think in that specific environment. And I think the amount I definitely like sucked in is limitless, so I still feel myself reaching into like baby Narumi or like kid Narumi and just like bringing forth the things I observed, things I experienced, and the different types of environment that I found myself in when I was back in Kashiwa.
If you could choose an artist to collaborate with, who would it be and why?
It would definitely be Kelis. I listened to her a lot, and not only that, but I recently was watching her, I think London tour, but there's a specific concert footage of her singing Caught Out There with her whole band, and everyone's just like expressing and screaming into the camera like the phrases and lines of the song and Caught Out There, and the emphasis and the punch and like the that everyone on stage has just been so refreshing and relieving to watch over and over again. And the guitarist and the bassist are women, and then the way they're like grooving to the music while Kelis and the other crew is just like going in is so moving and so inspiring. And so if I could ever get to collaborate with Kelis, that'd be really sick.
You have an upcoming solo exhibition at More Pain in New York in October 2021. Tell me more about that.
And so for this show, I've been really interested in the desolation and also the like play, the aspect of play and playgrounds, and also in cemeteries. And I definitely see my pieces as things that are alive in their own way, and it's really heartbreaking to see them just sit on pedestals whenever I exhibit them. And so towards the show, I've been wanting to create an environment that allows for my pieces to communicate a way that they're playing and kind of like communicating with the environment. And so for this show towards October, I've really been still trying to figure out what it means for my pieces to play in a given environment, and not only a given environment, but I also want to take part in being able to activate what a environment of play looks like for my pieces.
What has been the most memorable moment for you in 2021 and why?
So far, the most memorable moment in 2021 has been falling in love for the first time, but then also going through a heartbreak that came with that. I feel like I really learned a lot about everything, and with that, I've been able to like push forth and just kind of like exert all of that into my clay practice. And so I feel like as I am going through all these emotions, I'm also going through, like literally going through everything like through my work. And I feel like it's become a really good sense of, I don't know, like a really good resource to kind of just be vulnerable and express it through my pieces. There are so many things that I can't express verbally, but I feel like when I'm making the marks on my pieces, when I'm touching the clay, I'm acknowledging everything I'm feeling, and seeing it in a different tangible form outside of myself has been really refreshing and relieving.
Looking back at your experience as a young artist, what would you like your next 5 years to look like?
The next 5 years, I definitely would want to. I didn't grow up with an art background. I definitely found it myself, and the fact that this can be a career or something that you do for whatever reason you want to do is really relieving. And so I want my next 5 years to be able to be someone who can like remind kids that clay and art form is an option, and to dispel like all the pressure that comes with it, and to have worked a lot with just kids and like learn from each other. And yeah, I want my next 5 years to be something where maybe I make a collective or something involving kids working with their hands more, and then like maybe sustaining a practice that works for them that they can come back to whenever needed.